Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Bubble talk, because it is that time of year. We did this on Friday's show. A lot of you seem to really like it. So let's just go ahead and quickly rip through the winners and the losers on the bubble from over the weekend. Because we're a glasses half full podcast, let's start with the winners of the weekend. First one, a team that I think low-key people probably are not fully aware is even on the bubble, is actually probably Baylor, okay? So Baylor, preseason top 25 team, top 10 team, and they were a top 10 team because they were in my top 10. I had the same top 10 as the AP, and they took kind of a lot of losses in non-con, but you sat there and said, well, they're going to get right for the Big 12. Then all of a sudden, they weren't playing great in the Big 12. They lost 3 straight. They were in Joe Lunardi's next 4 out, so basically the final 8 teams in the field. They had taken a bad loss to Colorado. They needed to get right. They did so at Oklahoma State. With the win, they're now 17-12. I think the positive for them, they have some really solid wins out of conference. A bubble win over Arkansas, who's also on the bubble. They beat St. John's, a game that is going to continue to look better as time goes on. And then, listen, it's almost like the SEC. Essentially, any win you get in the Big 12 is going to be good. This is a team that beat Kansas earlier in the year. This is a team that beat West Virginia, who's a tournament team. They don't have a ton of great wins, but probably enough. Still, you're sitting there at 17-12 overall. You don't want to play with fire too much, 9-9 in the Big 12. I would say go ahead and win one of your final 2. You got to win at TCU over the course of the week. They play there on Tuesday night. TCU is outside the bubble picture as of right now, and that's especially true because you close with Houston at home. So, yeah, I would say beat TCU. You're probably in pretty good shape. You're not going to be punished for losing to Houston on the final day of the regular season. But to their credit, Baylor got a win in a game that they needed. They need to win on Tuesday as well against TCU. Really quickly, let's rip through some of the other ones. Let's go to the SEC. I just mentioned them. Vanderbilt took care of Missouri in overtime. Now their 3rd straight win over a ranked team. Took care of Ole Miss, won at Texas A&M, now beat Missouri. They're 20-9. 8-8 in the SEC. I think they're in the NCAA tournament. I don't even think we need to continue to talk about them as a bubble team. Like everybody else, they're playing for seeding. Credit to Mark Byington. Listen, I saw this as a sentiment from the John Rothsteins and the other people in this business, and I kind of agree with it, is that basically, look, Bruce Pearl's going to win SEC Coach of the Year. If he doesn't, Todd Golden probably deserves it. But man, oh man, what Mark Byington is doing, I believe Vandy was picked to finish 16th in the SEC. The fact that they are now very much in the tournament, let's just go ahead and give Vanderbilt a ton of credit. They do go ahead and close with a couple sort of big ones, right? They play Arkansas at home, and they also play Georgia to close the regular season at Georgia. And so they are not only, I think, in the tournament, I guess in theory, if they lost both those games, maybe they're back on the bubble. They could also knock a few teams out of the tournament picture. By the way, producer Matt, who is he's a little bit of a college hoops diehard right now. He used to just follow Auburn football recruiting this time of year, but now he's a big basketball guy. He just DM'd me privately. He said, I think Vandy is the most underrated team going into the tournament if they get in. I happen to agree. I think they could get up to that 8-9 line. Again, this is a team that's beaten Tennessee. This is a team that's beaten Kentucky. This is when Kentucky was close to full strength. Beat Missouri, beat Ole Miss. You think they're going to be scared if they're on a neutral court against Duke or somebody like that? So Vandy gets the win. I think they're officially off the bubble. Got a lot of teams here. I'll try to be a little bit quicker. Georgia, got to give credit. I used to call him mediocre Mike White. Now I might have to call him late season run Mike White, because Georgia got a 2nd straight big win. Earlier in the week, they beat Florida. They go to Texas, in which was basically a bubble elimination game. They destroyed Texas. Final score 83-67 in this game. Great win for them, and really just a roller coaster of a season. We talked about it on Friday's show. They started 2-1 in SEC play, proceeded to go 2-10 from there, or I guess it would have been 2-9 from there. And you kind of said they're just on the outside looking in. They got no shot. Well, you beat Florida. You win at Texas. Those are 2 quad 1 wins. Georgia has a nice win over St. John's in the out of conference. I think right now they're in. Now the work isn't done. Got to go to that snake pit that is South Carolina. Texas has lost at South Carolina. Arkansas just lost at South Carolina. If Georgia loses at South Carolina, they're probably in the same position as Arkansas. Maybe got to win out. Maybe got to win a game or two at the SEC tournament. I mean, South Carolina, we had a vision of 14 SEC teams in. South Carolina might be the team that knocks off a bunch of these teams because Arkansas now takes a bad loss. Texas, we're going to talk about in a minute. But credit Georgia, they got another big win. Know who we need to give credit to? The Indiana Hoosiers very quietly are playing very good basketball, all right? So Mike Effin Woodson, this guy, man, he's forced into retirement, forced to resign. We're calling it a retirement, whatever. Lose the next game to Michigan. They easily could have won. They're now 4-1 in their last 5 games, okay? And so on Saturday, they go to Washington. They have the West Coast road trip. By the way, the Big Ten schedule makers screwed them over. The fact that they're going to the West Coast with 3 games left in early March just feels ridiculous. I think next year, the Big Ten, I think the final 3 games of the season, all those West Coast schools should be playing each other. So UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, let's get a little round robin going to end the season. But I bring it up because Indiana was playing Washington. Washington's really bad. And really, this was more of a can't lose game than a must win game, if that makes sense. Like, you just can't lose to Washington. So they do get the win. To their credit, they get the victory. Again, 4-1 since 4-1 in their last 5. I think they're probably in the tournament. They're 18-11 right now. All 11 losses are in quad 1. A couple very nice quad 1 wins, including Purdue at home last week. Got to give Mike Woodson credit where he's due. Now, listen, the other thing too, I don't think either of the final 2 games will crush you if you lose them. Oregon on the road, quad 1 opportunity. Ohio State, another bubble team. I wouldn't recommend going 0-2, but I think you go 1-1, you're in pretty good shape going to the Big Ten tournament. Credit Indiana. They have now won 4 or 5, as I've said a few times. North Carolina, listen, we threw dirt on their grave probably about 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. I'm not going to sit here and pat everybody on the back because North Carolina beat the worst team in the ACC. But with this win, North Carolina takes care of business against Miami, and they have now quietly won 5 straight games. Again, we're not giving them too much credit for beating Florida State, whose coach has resigned. How about this? The last 3 wins for for North Carolina have been against 3 teams whose coaches have either retired midseason or are about to retire at the end of the year. They beat Virginia. They beat one at Florida State. They win at Miami on Saturday. So we're not going to give them credit, but we're not going to give them too much credit. But the bottom line is they had 5 straight games that they couldn't lose. They have won 5 straight. Now it's where it gets interesting. Can't lose to Virginia Tech at home or on the road this week. Virginia Tech is not good. I think that's another coaching job that very well could open this year. You got to get that win. You play Duke on Saturday to close the regular season. Listen, nobody is going to criticize North Carolina for not beating Duke. Obviously, I think if you beat Duke, that's the win that gets you in. You go 1-1. I think you're in pretty good shape going into the ACC tournament. If you go 1-1, that means you finish 20-11 overall. Is that right? Interesting. North Carolina is 19-11 right now, which means they somehow got to play an extra regular season game that I'm not aware of, because you play 31 regular season games. That's 30. So I guess they're playing 32 regular season games in Chapel Hill. I don't know. I just bring it up because they're at 19-11. You finished 20-12. I think you're probably in pretty good shape. You just don't want to take an awful loss at the ACC tournament, but they get the win. Listen, minimal credit to Wake Forest. Wake Forest, we talked about last week. They were the big loser of last week. They lost 3 of 4 to very bad teams. Florida State at home, at NC State. Virginia at home the other day was the crusher. They're now on the fringes of the bubble conversation. They played Notre Dame on the road Notre Dame at home this weekend. It was just a game you couldn't lose. They get the win. We're not going to celebrate them too much. They were in the field and they played themselves out of it. This was a win you had to have. They get it. Good news for them. They play Duke on Monday night, Big Monday. You get that win, we're having a different conversation. I don't think you're going to get it, but if you do, it's a different conversation. Wake Forest gets the win. Xavier, a team that we haven't talked about, Sean Miller's crew, playing really good basketball right now. So they're an interesting story because they got like the tough part of the Big East schedule to start the season. So right now, how about this with Xavier? So right now, we know that St. John's is in first place in the Big East. Creighton is in second place. Marquette is in third place. UConn's in fourth place. Before February 1st, Xavier played UConn twice, St. John's twice, Marquette twice, and Creighton once. So basically, of the 8 toughest games you could have in league play, they had 7 of them by basically like January 25th, okay? I only bring that up to very simply say that to their credit, they got a soft spot in their schedule. They're taking advantage. They've won 5 in a row, 6 of 7. The win against Creighton on Saturday, I think, really puts them in good position. Now, the thing with Xavier, can't take more bad losses. A lot of bad losses in the Big East this year. You have at Butler, Providence to close the regular season. You win those 2. You're 21-10 going into the Big East tournament. The other thing, too, Big East tournament bracket breaks nicely for them. They very likely will get UConn in their first game. You beat UConn in that game, you're in the NCAA tournament. So the road is ahead for Xavier. Xavier, by the way, beat UConn earlier this year in Cincinnati. Madison Square Garden would be a different deal, but Xavier gets a very nice win. And then out of the Mountain West, Boise and San Diego State both on the bubble. I'll be quick here because basically the bottom line is these two teams had a very similar profile. Both of them had road games against bad teams. Boise was playing at Fresno. San Diego State was playing at Wyoming. Neither of them could take a loss. Neither of them does. They both get a win. They both have manageable schedules this last week. The Mountain West trying to get 4 teams in. New Mexico, Utah State are locks. The big question is what's next for BYU and San Diego State. Let's get to some losers. Going to take another quick swig of water here. I'm going on an hour, 10 minutes strong. Let's be quick here. All right, we got some losers. No, who's a loser? We already talked about them. Arkansas Razorbacks. Listen, we just did a deep dive on Arkansas. Cal said after the game, listen, we were due for a dud. They get a dud. Nothing else to say. You have to move on. You have to beat Vanderbilt on Tuesday. By the way, that's a very tough place to play. Missouri just lost there. Kentucky lost there earlier. Tennessee lost there. But you're a team that did win at Kentucky. You're a team that did win at Texas. You're a team that, you've won in big venues before. You have to go to Vanderbilt and get that win. We know about that. We know about Arkansas. We'll see what happens Tuesday night against Vandy. Texas. Texas is a big old loser, okay? Just like Georgia dominated them during the football season, Georgia dominated them at home. We talked about things from the Georgia side of things. Texas is in a free fall right now. Texas now has lost with this loss, I believe, let me double check here. I believe it's 4 straight overall and 6 of 7. Yeah, that's right. 6 of 7 overall. Only win, ironically, was Kentucky at home in a game that you were basically losing the entire game. And, I don't know what else there is to say. It's bad. They're 16-13 right now. Listen, I think there's a scenario where they can still make the NCAA tournament, but probably of all those SEC teams, they have the most work to do. Bad news for them. It doesn't get any easier at Mississippi State on Tuesday night. That is a tough place to play. Then they close with Oklahoma. Feels like the Oklahoma-Texas game is a pseudo bubble burst type game. The loser of that game, I just don't see the scenario where they get in, which brings us to Oklahoma. Oklahoma last Saturday gets the win over Mississippi State at home. You wonder, can they build some momentum? Well, they were in control late against Kentucky. Otega Owe makes that shot. You lose that game. Same deal on Saturday. They're at Ole Miss, have a chance, can't find a way to win. They have now lost their last 2 games by a combined 4 points. And I think they're on the outside looking in. 17-12 overall. We talked about them. They have some great out-of-conference wins. This is a team that beat Arizona and Louisville in Atlantis. Now, Arizona wasn't playing well. Louisville had an injury. Doesn't change. Those wins still count the same. They beat Michigan on a neutral court. So they have good wins, but they're 4-12 in the SEC right now. I don't think the committee can look at a team that went 5-13, even in the toughest league in college basketball history, and say they should be in. I think 6-12 is probably the cutoff. Georgia and Arkansas both have 6 wins. I think Oklahoma's got to go 2-0. I can't see a scenario where a team that went 5-13 in their league is worthy of an NCAA tournament bid. So they close this final week. Missouri at home. Missouri's struggling a little bit too. And then at Texas. And I just think it's a bad spot. I think Oklahoma's on the outside looking in. I know as of last Saturday, I think 14 teams for the SEC was really kind of in play. Well, listen, Texas has played their way out. I think Oklahoma is on the fringes. We've talked about Arkansas. I don't see the scenario where we're getting 14. I think it's probably closer to 11. I think we get 12. The question is that 12 team Oklahoma, maybe Texas, maybe Arkansas, maybe Georgia too. I don't think we'll get 10. I think there will be at least 11, maybe 12. I think 14 at this point is pretty ambitious. Do I have any more losers? Oh, SMU. Listen, love the Ponies. Love Andy Enfield. For people who forget, Andy Enfield, the former USC coach, is at SMU. I'll tell you, very interesting resume. They had no quad one wins coming into this weekend, but no really bad losses. Well, they take a quad two loss at Stanford. And I think Stanford is improving. Doesn't change the fact that it's a bad time to take this loss if you're SMU, because the bottom line is you have no great wins. I think they're sitting at like 21-8 right now, something like that, 21-9. But the truth of the matter is you just have no great wins. And if you have no great wins, it's hard to justify even in the ACC getting in. So this was a bad loss for SMU. You could not afford to take this loss, and you did. Finally, the Cincinnati Bearcats. Listen, you don't want to criticize them too much. They lost at Houston. And that game to me is more of a, if you had won it, it probably completely changes the way that we're looking at your resume. But they don't win it. Now they're 17-12, much like Baylor, Kansas State, and at Oklahoma State to end the regular season. I think they got to win both of those to even be in the conversation going into the Big 10, Big 12 tournament. They don't have a ton of really good wins from the out of conference. So Cincinnati, in my opinion, on the outside looking in.